On the afternoon of the 15th of January 2019, in the business district of Nairobi, a man in a checked shirt and a baseball cap walked toward the sound of gunfire. Everyone else was running the other way. 4 gunmen from al-Shabaab had walked into the Dusit D2 complex with grenades and assault rifles and begun killing office workers at their desks. The man in the checked shirt wasn't a policeman. He wasn't, officially, anywhere near Kenya. He was a sergeant in the British Special Air Service, off-duty, and he had just borrowed a rifle. Over the next few hours, he would go back into that building again and again and again, and bring people out alive. Britain would give him its second highest award for gallantry. It wouldn't let anyone print his face or his name. His pseudonym is Christian Craighead. That is the only name available, a legal fiction constructed to protect a real one. He was born in Newcastle upon Tyne in 1976, joined the British Army at 16, served in the Parachute Regiment, was selected for 22 Special Air Service, and spent 28 years moving through the kind of operational terrain most people only read about in the Sunday papers. On the afternoon in question, he was in East Africa on a training deployment. Within hours, his face, blurred but recognisable as a man in civilian clothes moving through a gun battle, was on the front pages of newspapers in 5 continents. And within days, the British government quietly asked those papers to forget what they'd seen. This is the story of what he did, what it cost, and why the country that pinned a medal on him decided the world wasn't allowed to know his name. The 14 Riverside Drive complex sits in Westlands, a high-end district 5 kilometres from central Nairobi, the kind of address that signals money, internationalism and relative safety. The compound is mixed use: corporate offices, restaurants, a bank, a landscaped courtyard, and at its centre the Dusit D2, a 5-star boutique hotel whose parent chain is Thai-owned. International NGOs keep offices there, multinational firms, the sort of compound where, on a Tuesday afternoon in January, people are at their desks, finishing lunch, taking calls. At approximately 3 o'clock local time on the 15th of January, the assault began. Al-Shabaab sent 5 men. 4 carried AK-47 type rifles and grenades. The 5th walked into the hotel lobby and detonated himself. The explosion tore through the foyer. Simultaneously, a vehicle in the car park was set alight, cutting off one route of escape. The 4 surviving gunmen pushed through the hotel and into the adjoining office buildings, moving from floor to floor, killing whoever they encountered. Al-Shabaab is a Somali Islamist militant group, al-Qaeda affiliated, with a specific and documented reason to target Kenya. In October 2011, the Kenyan Defence Forces crossed into Somalia as part of AMISOM, the African Union mission against al-Shabaab. The group declared retaliation. In September 2013, they sent gunmen into the Westgate shopping mall in Nairobi. 67 people died over 4 days. Dusit D2 was the same logic, sharpened by 6 more years of cross-border war. Al-Shabaab's official claim of responsibility for Dusit D2 stated the attack was conducted in accordance with al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri's guidelines for targeting Western interests. The business district of Nairobi, full of international workers and foreign nationals, was precisely what those guidelines described. By mid-afternoon, the complex was under fire. People sheltered under desks, in stairwells, behind locked doors. Kenya's security services began mobilizing, but coordinating a response to a complex, multi-building, active shooter siege takes time that the people still inside the compound didn't have. The man who closed that gap was already in the area when it started. Britain maintains a permanent military presence in Kenya through the British Army Training Unit Kenya, BATUK. Established in its current form in 2008, though British training organisations have operated in the country for decades longer, BATUK runs out of two locations. Its headquarters and main training activity is coordinated near Nanyuki, roughly 200 kilometres north of Nairobi, at the Nanyuki Showground. But it also maintains a logistics and transport hub at Kifaru Barracks, inside a Kenyan army base in the capital itself. Approximately 230 permanent UK staff support the unit. Each year, up to 6 infantry battalions and 3 Royal Engineer squadrons rotate through Kenya on 8-week training exercises, somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 troops annually, cycling through East African terrain, preparing for deployments that require it. The day before the Dusit D2 attack, the 14th of January, the UK Defence Infrastructure Organisation published a blog article confirming BATUK was fully operational. The unit's Nairobi hub means British military personnel are a routine part of the city's landscape. They transit through, conduct logistics operations, take leave, move between the capital and Nanyuki. For a Special Forces sergeant attached to one of those rotations to be off-duty in Westlands on a Tuesday afternoon isn't remarkable. It's exactly the kind of ordinary circumstance that produces extraordinary events. The specific chain of command for Craighead's deployment, and which Kenyan unit he was formally attached to at the time of the attack, isn't in the public domain. The Guardian reported the following morning that he had been in Kenya to train Kenyan special forces. Multiple accounts describe him as having been operating in or near Westlands when the attack began, with his equipment accessible. What is clear from the photographic record is that when he arrived at 14 Riverside Drive, he wasn't improvising from nothing. The photographs that circulated that day and the next show a man in civilian clothes, a shirt, no uniform, wearing a tactical chest rig, carrying what appears from the visual evidence to be an AR-15 pattern carbine fitted with optical sight and accessories. The weapon is consistent with the L119A2, which is standard British Special Forces issue. Accounts that describe him as having simply borrowed a rifle from a Kenyan officer are widespread and make for a compelling image, but the photographic record tells a more complicated story. Exactly how he came by that weapon in the first minutes of his arrival is something officials have never confirmed. What isn't disputed is that he had one, and he used it. The Guardian's caption on one photograph, taken by Kabir Danji for AFP/Getty Images, shows him entering a building attached to the Dusit D2. A second Reuters photograph shows him helping a woman to safety. A third shows him searching a man at the scene. The images are sequential proof of someone working, not watching, not waiting at a cordon, but moving into and through the buildings while the attack was still active. Kenya's General Service Unit Recce Company, the GSU Recce, an elite paramilitary unit under the National Police Service, headquartered in Ruiru and tasked with counter-terrorism and high-risk operations, was among the Kenyan forces responding to the siege. He operated in their operational space, and accounts consistently describe him working alongside Kenyan security personnel rather than in complete isolation. The United States State Department, through its Diplomatic Security Service, later documented that a Kenyan National Police Crisis Response Team, trained by the American Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program, was also on site, and credited them with engaging and killing at least 2 of the 5 attackers. What separates what he did from what those units did isn't heroism in the abstract. It's the specific, verifiable fact that he was there before any of them, acting without orders, without authorization, through any formal chain of command, on his own initiative, because he was the only person present with the training to do what the moment required. By his own subsequent account, and by photographic record, he entered the buildings multiple times while they were still active. How many times precisely isn't established in any official record. Accounts from secondary sources suggest somewhere between 4 and 6 entries, but journalism and official documents only confirm multiple re-entries. Each time he came out with people. Each time he went back in. The complex isn't small. The 14 Riverside compound spans an entire city block. Hotel, office buildings, courtyards, service corridors. Moving through it while 4 armed gunmen are systematically working through the floors means clearing your path as you go, managing what you can see and what you can't, keeping whoever is with you alive long enough to reach an exit. The Kenyan Recce Company was training to do this kind of work. He didn't leave. He went back. By approximately 11 o'clock that night, Kenyan security forces had contained the surviving attackers to the upper floors of the hotel. Pre-dawn, around 4 in the morning of the 16th, the final phase began. Kenyan units forcing the remaining militants into a single room. The last tactical action was complete by approximately 5 o'clock in the morning. At around that hour, the complex fell silent for the first time in 14 hours. The Kenyan government's formal announcement came later that morning. President Uhuru Kenyatta confirmed on social media that all the attackers had been eliminated. The government statement described the operation as secured. The US State Department, in its own subsequent documentation, put the time from first explosion to official all clear at roughly 18 hours. 21 people were dead, none of them with a man in the checked shirt. 21 dead, plus dozens injured. The Kenyan Directorate of Criminal Investigations confirmed that figure after the conviction, in separate proceedings, of 2 men, Mohammed Abdi Ali and Hussein Abdil Mohammed, for conspiracy and facilitation in connection with the attack. Among the 21 were Kenyans and foreign nationals. The US State Department confirmed at least 1 American citizen was killed. Office workers at their desks, people in the hotel restaurant, a woman who had entered her 4th-floor office in the building adjacent to the hotel that morning, expecting an ordinary Tuesday. Al-Shabaab's own propaganda claimed 50 dead. Not one independent authority supported that figure. The confirmed toll is 21. The legal proceedings ran for years. 2 men were convicted. The dead stayed dead. This is the context in which the photographs of a blurred-faced man in a chest rig circulated around the world. Within 24 hours of the attack, images of him were on newspaper front pages and social media feeds globally. The Guardian, AFP, Reuters, major wire services had photographs from Kenyan photographers on the ground. The pictures were extraordinary because they were clearly of a single man operating at a different level of equipment and apparent skill from the uniformed Kenyan forces around him, in civilian clothes, in what was visibly an active combat situation. Speculation about his identity began immediately. Within hours, British military sources had confirmed to The Sun and The Guardian that he was SAS. The Ministry of Defence's response to those questions was its standard position on special forces: no comment. But the photographs were already out. The system that governs how British media handles sensitive military information is called the Defence and Security Media Advisory System, the DSMA, what most people still call D-notices. Created in 2015 under that revised name, it operates on a principle that matters enormously for understanding what happened next. It's entirely voluntary. DSMA notices are formal requests to editors, not laws. Compliance is high because the consequences of getting it wrong, identifying a serving Special Forces soldier, endangering him and his family, are serious. But editors can, legally, decline. The system runs on professional responsibility rather than legal enforcement. In the 6 months from April to October 2021, the DSMA committee was contacted for advice 78 times. Close to a fifth of those contacts related to special forces. The committee's standard correspondence in these cases, as documented in the context of other incidents, describes identified personnel as facing jeopardized personal safety and notes that disclosure runs contrary to the terms of DSMA Notice 5, the notice specifically covering the identities of people in sensitive positions and their families. No formal DSMA notice specifically addressing the Nairobi photographs has ever appeared in the public record. What happened in practice, almost certainly, is what always happens in these cases. Phone calls to editors, requests for restraint, quiet conversations between officials and newsrooms. The photographs had already gone worldwide on wire services before any British editorial guidance could have effect. His face was blurred in the versions published by major UK outlets. Social media, operating under no such guidance, carried unblurred versions to audiences no phone call to a newspaper editor could reach. The MOD's position, then and subsequently, was its standing policy. It does not confirm or deny the identity, rank, or operations of UK Special Forces personnel. His formal anonymity remained intact in official documents. The country that sent him, or more precisely, the country that trained and equipped him and happened to have him in Nairobi on that particular Tuesday, had decided that the world wasn't entitled to know which man it was looking at. That decision had a logic. The families of serving Special Forces soldiers are, in a documented and serious sense, targets. The argument isn't abstract. But it produced a situation that is, at minimum, philosophically interesting. A man had just performed one of the more remarkable acts of individual courage documented in the 21st century, in broad daylight, photographed by 3 separate wire agencies, and the official position of Her Majesty's government was that it hadn't happened. 2.5 years later, in October 2021, the Operational Honours and Awards list was published by the British government. Twice a year, the list recognises what the official description calls the bravery, commitment and commendable service of armed forces personnel. Among the awards in the October 2021 list was the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross, awarded for actions on the 15th and 16th of January 2019 in Nairobi, Kenya. The recipient was identified by the pseudonym Christian Craighead. The Conspicuous Gallantry Cross was established in 1993 and first awarded in 1995. It replaced the Conspicuous Gallantry Medal and the Distinguished Conduct Medal, consolidating the second tier of British gallantry recognition into a single decoration. In the hierarchy of British bravery awards, it sits directly below the Victoria Cross. That isn't a minor distinction. The VC has been awarded fewer than 1,600 times in its entire history, and the CGC is explicitly second to it. One source describing it puts the matter plainly: second only to the VC for bravery in the face of the enemy. Craighead himself has stated publicly that the original plan was for the award to be presented by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic intervened. The award was instead carried in the October 2021 list. His entry in the Victoria Cross online database lists him as Christian Craighead, CGCMBE, indicating he also holds a Member of the Order of the British Empire, likely from earlier service. The full citation wording from the London Gazette isn't in the public domain. The classified nature of Special Forces operations means the detailed justification for the award remains sealed. The Telegraph, reporting in October 2023 on related legal proceedings, described him as having been awarded the CGC for fighting al-Shabaab terrorists at the Dusit D2 Hotel in Nairobi in 2019. That is the public characterization. The specifics of what he did that day, the sequence, the entries, the encounters, remain officially classified. Anonymous CGC awards are standard procedure for UKSF, not a departure from normal practice. The medal went to a pseudonym in a government list. Somewhere, a man received it in circumstances that have never been described in a public document. What that medal represents in the lineage of British Special Forces requires a moment's context. On the 19th of July 1972, in the coastal garrison town of Mirbat in the Dhofar province of Oman, 9 men of 22 SAS were manning a small British Army training team position when approximately 250 to 300 fighters of the People's Front for the Liberation of the Occupied Arabian Gulf attacked before dawn. 9 men. The SAS held the position, taking casualties, including Corporal Laba and Trooper Tobin, both killed, until a relief force arrived by helicopter. The Battle of Mirbat is widely regarded as one of the most extraordinary small unit defensive actions in British military history. It's taught, it's cited, it's within the regiment a reference point for what the institution believes it's capable of. The founder of the SAS, Lieutenant David Stirling, built the regiment in 1941 in North Africa on a single principle: small teams, individual initiative, speed of decision, operating without the weight of conventional military hierarchy. One of the regiment's original members, describing the ethos in oral testimony, put it this way: all the thinking and all the initiative had to be taken by the individual soldier. Mark Urban, in his account of SAS operations in Iraq between 2003 and 2009, documented how that same doctrine, small team initiative, rapid decision-making without waiting for authorization from above, defined what made the regiment effective in complex urban environments decades after Stirling's death. Craighead's CGC sits at the end of that line, a man who, on his own initiative, without orders, without a formal tasking, without even a clear chain of command, made a series of decisions that no training manual requires and no orders could compel. The SAS has always produced soldiers who make those decisions. The regiment's peculiarity is that it specifically selects for them men who can act without being told to, in situations where being told to isn't an option. The bureaucrats in Whitehall who eventually processed the award understood what they were recognizing: the second highest decoration for gallantry in the face of the enemy, given to a man whose name they couldn't publish. There is a postscript that takes the story in a direction the medal ceremony couldn't have predicted. In the years following Dusit D2, Craighead, operating under his pseudonym, his face blurred in official contexts, his real name protected by institutional policy, began to speak, not in classified briefings, on American podcasts. On the 15th of January 2024, the 5th anniversary of the attack, the Sean Ryan Show published an episode entitled simply Christian Craighead, SAS Operator. The runtime was 3 hours and 26 minutes. It has since been viewed approximately 4 million times. He described his life: joining the Parachute Regiment at 16, selection for 22 SAS, deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, the years of operational service. He described Kenya. The episode's description credits him with saving over 700 lives. That specific figure isn't corroborated by any official assessment. The precise number of people evacuated directly through his actions isn't documented in any public record. But the compound housed a large number of people when the attack began, and the record of his multiple re-entries into a building that was still under fire speaks for itself, without requiring an exact tally. He also discussed the British government's blowback, the outstanding position of the Ministry of Defence, the constraints on what he can and can't say publicly, because there is a book, or rather, there was almost a book. Craighead wrote a memoir. He titled it One Man In. Simon & Schuster agreed to publish it. The book covered the events of the 15th of January 2019 in Kenya in detail. And in October 2023, Mrs. Justice Tyne of the High Court of England and Wales refused him permission to publish it. The legal basis was the Official Secrets Act and national security, the standard grounds on which the British state can prevent the publication of material by former intelligence and special forces personnel. The judgment made no comment on whether the material in the book was true or whether its publication would have been in the public interest. It concluded that the information fell within the categories the law protects. The book was blocked. Craighead posted about it on Instagram. His account uses the tagline, "Here I am, send me," from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 8, where the prophet volunteers for a mission whose dangers he can't fully know. He told his followers, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but my book, One Man In, isn't coming out." He noted that the book had focused specifically on Kenya, not on his broader SAS career. And he added one line that functioned, in its restraint, as a kind of statement of intent. The story about that day in Kenya isn't going away. A separate work, The Wrong Wolf, was listed for pre-order through Soldier Systems in October 2023 and is available through Simon & Schuster and other platforms. Its exact relationship to the blocked memoir isn't entirely clear from public information. They may be distinct works or the same manuscript under a different title and scope. He appears to have found a way to publish something. What precisely the British state permitted him to say and what it didn't is a distinction drawn somewhere in a classified legal judgment that the public can't read. The paradox of his situation is precise and documented. He has a public Instagram account with a management email address. He speaks at events in the United States, including CPAC conferences. He gave a 3.5-hour interview to an American podcast that 4 million people watched. He is, in any meaningful sense, a public figure. And yet the British government maintains his formal anonymity in official records, blocked his book-length account of the central event of his public life, and operates the policy that his identity can't be confirmed or denied in official contexts. He joined the British Army at 16. He served for 28 years by the publisher's account, which, if accurate, places his departure from service around 2020 or after. He is consistently described, in every source that has addressed the question since then, as a former operator. The service is behind him. What isn't behind him is the 15th of January 2019. The High Court ruling ensures it. He can't write the full account. He can talk around it, reference it, allude to it on podcasts and at conferences and on social media, but the definitive book-length version, the one that would have contained the granular reconstruction of what he saw and did in those 18 hours, belongs to a category of information the British state has placed beyond his reach to publish. The irony, if it can be called that without overstating the point, is that the British state created this situation entirely. It trained the man. It deployed him to Kenya. It awarded him the second highest decoration for what he did there. And then it declined to let him tell the story of doing it. His Instagram biography, as of the time of this account, reads, "Skilled and relentless good guy." He has a medal he can't wear in public and a face the country isn't allowed to see. The hotel reopened. The families buried their 21. And somewhere in Britain, a man who walked into a siege with a borrowed rifle goes to the shops like anyone else. Because the same country that pinned the cross on him decided the world could never know which man it was. He walked in alone. He walked out the same way. If you want more stories like this, the unrecognised acts, the classified medals, the men the state simultaneously honours and erases, subscribe. There are more.